One of the most underrated games in college football this week is Memphis versus Missouri. These are two undefeated teams that have had kind of roller coaster seasons so far. Both teams have some really exciting players. Both teams have some explosive weapons that they can utilize. And then they just have to figure out what's going on defensively. Both of them have talent on defense, but I think you've seen a lot of ups and downs for both sides. Memphis is the more explosive offense, but when you look at the talent that they played, especially the fact that Missouri played Kansas State last week, you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. I think Memphis can score points in a hurry, but this is their first true test, and we'll see what that means in terms of how they stop Missouri and how they're able to take things away from this offense. We saw a strong performance from Missouri's offense last week, and that puts a lot of pressure on Memphis defense. When you look at last week against Navy, I made this joke before is it feels like Memphis every time they play Navy sees the triple option for the first time. It's like they've never seen it before. Now, granted, they did figure some things out at the end. They did create some turnovers, but the knock on Memphis under Ryan Silverfield is that they've had an offense that can score points most of the time at a furious clip. It's just that their defense hasn't really stepped up. And then when the offense stalls, the defense has never really provided the play to make up for that gap. If their defense can step up in this game, Memphis has a legitimate chance of winning this football game. I think that the fact that they're able to create turnovers, you've seen a number of big playmakers. They have talent at all three levels, and they've been able to make some big plays. It's just that we haven't seen it consistently. We have not seen them do it and play with a ton of discipline in all four quarters. And that's on Silverfield and this staff to get them going because you're playing a team like Missouri that will not give you second chances. They will not give you third chances to try and figure things out. As soon as they make a big play, it's most likely ending in the end zone. And a guy that will do that to them is Luther Burden. Luther Burden is having a breakout year, and we kind of all expected that. We see him in the slot a little bit more, and Missouri absolutely feeds him the football, and that is a position that is weak for Memphis. Not only is their defense as a whole need to take a step forward, but who's going to cover Burden and slot? I don't think that Memphis has a guy that you feel comfortable with, and that's terrifying with the guy that could play in the NFL. I think that when you look at Luther Burden and what he can do, Missouri wants to feed him as much as possible, but he's just one playmaker that can do some damage. 327 yards and 3 touchdowns this year. He is someone that you definitely need to have circled if you're Memphis, and how they find a way to slow him down will be the biggest key in determining who wins this football game. Missouri also needs to find a way to stop the run for Memphis. I think Memphis has done a great job of utilizing the depth at the rushing attack and especially at running back. Blake Watson has been one of the best additions to any team in college football. He has 425 total yards. They use him as a runner and in the passing game, 7.4 yards per carry. He's an absolute monster. And so far, running the football has been relatively easy for Memphis. Now they're facing a front seven in Missouri that will be able to create some disruptiveness and slow things down. Finding a way to stop Blake Watson, who's a proven playmaker, a proven big time playmaker, will be the biggest key. I think that the other thing to keep an eye on is which quarterback steps up because these defenses, like I said, can create turnovers. They have done it in the past. And I think both teams have defenders that you need to keep an eye on and you can't take lightly. I think both pass rushes are much better than people anticipate. And so a lot of pressure does go on the offensive line. It's not just on the quarterbacks to deliver. Both offensive lines have to be ready because when you look at what these defensive lines can do, that takes a lot of pressure away if you're able to thwart those efforts. And then it just comes down to the quarterbacks making plays. Seth Hennigan has the ability to throw for 400 plus yards. Brady Cook proved that he can be an absolute asset in throwing the football as well with a 362-yard performance last week against Kansas State. This is a Kansas State team that won the Big 12, has plenty of talented defenders, and Brady Cook took their lunch money, essentially. Now, having Luther Burden plays a big role in that, but Brady Cook did his job. He did what he needed to do, and they got the win. Seth Hennigan, to me, has the talent to play in the NFL. It's just that he has never looked quite comfortable making plays on a consistent basis. I think last week against Navy, he looked very uncomfortable. He didn't have a ton of time to throw, but also when he did, he just made some really bad decisions. And I think that that contributed a lot to the struggles on top of the defense not playing consistently. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on because when you look at Seth Hennigan and Brady Cook, there are two X factors that determine how high these offenses rise. But you also have to take into account that I think that these offenses can be explosive, but also these defenses have that same ability. And finding ways to limit the opposing offense will go a long way into determining how good these teams will play. And you look at the number of playmakers on both sides, and the first thing that I notice is that Memphis has a lot on offense. They also have a ton on defense. A name that most people aren't talking about is Jalen Allen. Jalen Allen doesn't have the best stats, but he's an absolute wrecking ball on the edge for Memphis. Teams have definitely started sending extra help his way because that's how good he is. It just comes down to which other players can step up. Linebacker Jeff Canton RQ is also a proven playmaker. The former Syracuse transfer can make some big plays. He can create some stops. And honestly, that will help a lot against this Missouri offense. Missouri's offense, like we mentioned before, runs through Brady Cook. It also runs through Luther Burden. And what happens if Memphis takes them away or takes Burden away? What does this offense do? But also, their defense can play a big role in slowing down Memphis' offense as well. Johnny Walker Jr. having a big year for the Tigers already. Same with Dalen Carnell. You're looking at a defense that can be explosive, that can be disruptive. And if they're able to do that consistently, I think you're looking at a Memphis team that's in for a long night, and I think that Missouri is in business. Memphis is definitely a team that can win this game. I will say that right off the bat. The lack of consistency and I think the gaps between consistent play is really what hurts them. The lapses in focus, that's when the big plays happen. And you saw that against Navy. Now, Missouri doesn't run the triple option. They don't run that same offense, but they can score in a hurry. They have a number of playmakers that can make a house call at any point. So it's great that you're being disruptive, but if you take a couple plays off, that's when Missouri is going to hurt you. And right now, it feels like Missouri is a little bit more of a complete team. The consistency is there a little bit more for the Tigers. And that's really what makes the difference for me. Missouri is a team that's riding high. The only thing I could see is if they're kind of riding too high off the win against Kansas State last week and they slip up because they're not really taking Memphis seriously. That's when Memphis maybe pulls out a few tricks up their sleeve and they keep this game close. But to me, Missouri is the team that will win this game.